Good clap.
Very good clap. You doing good?
Doing good.
You guys doing good?
Can't tell. We can't hear you.
Well, you can, like, for your house party.
No, I can't. I'm plugging my ears right now.
You know what? Hey, guys, by the way, Stetson today, which is yesterday for all of you guys watching,
That's right.
just got his second COVID vaccine.
Right. So I might not actually be there.
And if he is there, everyone in his house party, do whatever you can to make whatever symptoms he's feeling be alleviated. Did you think I was going to say make him worse?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that to you.
Yes, you would.
How could I do that to you? You're my friend.
What? You do stuff all the time like that.
Have I told them about like what I do to your computer all the time?
No.
So we've got a pastor on staff here. His name is Bruce. And whenever Stetson walks away from his computer, I change his desktop background to a picture of Bruce.
Yeah.
And one time I figured out how to lock the background in some of the coding on his computer.
Yeah.
It took him like an hour to figure out how to change it.
It was so
And then
annoying.
at Zoe's, I got the man lift outside of our offices, and I went up there and I put a picture of Bruce on the outside of the window.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was hard to get down. I love Bruce. I just don't want that as my desktop.
you don't want him looking over your shoulder all the time?
Yeah.
Well, anyways, guys, we're going to get started. We're excited you guys are here for house parties tonight. We got a fun night planned for you. A couple things, just so you guys are aware, we do have some announcements for you to be aware of. The first one is about the class we got coming up.
Oh, yeah. So it's called The Big Questions. So
How big are they?
Really big.
Really big.
Yeah. So when we get together in house parties and student night, we kind of like just graze the surface of some things, and maybe some of you are like really itching to talk like really deeply about some bigger things. And we're going to start a group that's just for that. So me and a group of you guys, we're going to meet
And occasionally me.
Oh, yeah. And occasionally Nathan. We're going to meet almost every Monday during the summer at Zoe's at 9:30. We're going to have really good food. And we're going to talk about some of these bigger things, like who does God say I am? How do I read this complicated book that is the Bible? How do I talk to God? How does God talk back to me? Like, how do I hear him? Like, stuff like that. And if you have questions, like, we really want to talk about those too. If they come up in the conversation, we'll just see where it takes us. But if you want to be a part of this group, it'll be really fun. Honestly, it's going to be a good time. Let me or Nathan know.
Yep.
Let your house party leaders know, and they'll let us know. We would really love for you to be a part of it. It'll be fun. The first one is June 7th, I think, is
Awesome.
the first Monday.
June 7th. And then we've also got some other things coming up. We got the Rockies game that's going to be happening in the beginning of June. Your parents can sign you guys up for that. We've got barbecues that are happening the first Wednesday instead of a student night
that'll be
of
great.
each month. That's going to be great. We got paintball, and then we've got our in-city mission trip in July, which registration will open up soon for that. We're super excited, but like our hope, our desire, provide a lot of space for you guys to be able to connect this summer, build relationships, explore your faith a little bit deeper. And all of these things we have, these are actually like really great opportunities for you to bring your friends.
Totally.
So we would love for you guys to Beeb Ringer. Is that what it was?
Yeah, be a bee bringer.
Be a bringer.
Bee bringer? Yeah.
Beeb Ringer. Whatever. Bring your friends.
Be a
That's what we're
bringer.
trying to get at here. So, hey, moving along, let's do some slices.
Yeah.
Stetson, what do you got?
I didn't find anything in the news, but I wanted to share a meme that made me laugh out loud.
All right, so you're going to have to send this to me so I can pop it up here on the
I
video.
will.
And I've realized we've got to be careful with our memes because I accidentally posted a meme that was not well received by some people this
in
last
trouble
week.
for that one.
I didn't watch the video. I just laughed at the meme.
It's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah. So, do you know who Sun Tzu is?
Yeah, the Art of War.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know what century he lived in. It was like
He's like in 300s in China.
yeah,
Really good commander.
So there's this meme. It's a picture of him and this quote that they attribute to him. And it says that he said, "Everyone's an atheist until they clog the toilet in someone else's house." I'll send it to you right now.
Man.
But that's so true. Like,
has that happened to you before?
Yes.
Oh, man.
At my in-laws' house.
Good
It's
thing it
just
wasn't.
No!
This is why in my house, in our guest bathroom, I've always got a plunger in there.
That's what everyone should have.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, that's good hospitality. When that doesn't happen, it's just like, you've been there. Don't tell me you haven't been there.
I've never been there.
What? Oh my gosh. Well, it's true.
You know, at least it wasn't one of those open concept bathrooms we talked about before.
Yeah. Open concept plunging would be even more humiliating. Just like everyone's in the living room and you're in the corner. Oh, once again, we're 12. Hey man, this is why I'm drinking Mountain Dew.
Do the do, bro. Do the do.
Well, by the way, we're sponsored by Mountain Dew.
As you guys know, COVID changed a lot this last year and a half.
Yes.
There were a lot of industries that got hit really, really, really hard. One of those was the travel industry. So have you ever heard of Expedia?
Mm-hmm.
So Expedia, they're like a travel industry website that help you book flights, hotels, all that kind of stuff. Well, as people are starting to travel again because vaccines are out there, COVID cases are going down, all that stuff, people are starting to book with Expedia again. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that they noticed is that a lot of people were actually feeling a lot of fear and anxiety about traveling. Right, something like 80% of people are like, I don't know if I want to travel internationally. Mm-hmm. 60% of people had said that they wanted a helping hand figuring out how to travel, how to book things, and all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so Expedia came up with what I believe to be the very worst marketing campaign to try to promote people traveling that I have ever heard of. Now, have you heard of Joe Jonas?
No.
He's one of the Jonas Brothers?
Okay.
Okay. So Expedia partnered with Joe Jonas to do this thing that, like, in my opinion, is the creepiest thing ever. What they did is they did some 3D printing of his hand. Like, they got like a whole image of his hand and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And they did these 3D models of his hand, about 250 of them that people could win.
Okay.
And the whole marketing campaign was this, is like, hey, sometimes we just need somebody to hold our hand when we travel. And so 250 people were going to win this, like, printed hand. And a 3D printer makes it, like, life-size or whatever, but it looks like the dude got his hand chopped off, and they were going to send it to you. It was signed by him, and the whole thing is like, take Joe Jonas's hand while you travel. And so they wanted people to, like, on the airplane, hold his hand while they're sitting there if they're nervous.
That's odd. What material is this made out of?
I don't know, like plastic or something like that.
Man,
like you can make
they should have made it like one of those stress reliever balls, so you can just like squeeze the hand.
Think about, like, if you're not one of the people who won this and you're on an airplane and you see somebody walking on a plane with something that looks like a very lifelike hand just holding it, are you going to be less stressed out or more stressed out? I'm gonna be pretty confused. I'm gonna be like, who's this dude getting on the plane? Whose hand did he decapitate?
Yep.
Anyways, don't come up with dumb marketing ideas, guys. Well done, Expedia. I very much appreciate your creativity, your ingenuity, though.
I wonder how many people they asked before they got a yes from Joe Jonas.
And, like, why Joe Jonas?
Exactly, because he was, like, numbered 13 on the list.
Who would be number 1 on the list of whose hand you'd want to hold?
I'll have to think about that one.
Think about, like, David Duchovny from
Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford? Okay.
Yep.
I was thinking about what was that movie with Zoolander, right? Where Derek Duchovny, he was the hand model and he kept his hand within that. Yeah. That was a good looking hand.
All right.
Well, it's all I could find, guys. I mean, there's weirder stuff that happened out there, but Joe Jonas's hand, like, there's a part of me that wanted to win it and enter into this contest just so I could have some fun trying to prank people with it.
Yeah.
Put, like, a lot of, like, blood on it or something, like, or not blood, like ketchup or whatever. Anyways, moving along. We are going to be wrapping up our Jesus Is series tonight. Like, if you guys have been with us the last probably about like a month and a half, we've been having this conversation really about who Jesus actually is, right? There's a lot of misconceptions about his character, about who he is, about the way that he sees us. And the problem is, like, when we got misconceptions about these things, like, it could actually mess up the way we live our lives.
Yeah.
And keep us from experiencing, like, a lot of the joy that Jesus wants us to, the life that he wants us to, the just the good life.
Yeah. So everything that we've talked about wouldn't be possible if something hadn't happened.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I read a little bit?
Go for it.
Okay. So we've talked. Oh, there's that meme again. Bye, Sensu. So we've talked about a lot about how Jesus died on a cross for us to cancel out all the sin and rescue us from all these things. That's half of the big picture of that thing. The other half is what happened after that. He was put in this tomb, and some people came looking for him, and they opened up the tomb, and he wasn't there. And I think my favorite part of this story happens in Luke 24, verse 36 through, we'll go 41. So the disciples, the people that hung out with Jesus, they're hanging out in this room. And then it says that Jesus himself stood among them and said, "Peace to you." So he just appeared in this room. He's like, "Hello." And
that would be pretty creepy.
Yeah. And they just watched him die a few days earlier, but they were startled and frightened and thought they saw a spirit or a ghost. And he said to them, "Why are you troubled? And why do doubts arise in your hearts? See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Touch me and see me, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have." And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. And while they still disbelieved for joy and were marveling, he said to them, "Have you got anything to eat?" Jesus is so freaking awesome. Just like, he's like, "What's up, guys?" Like, out of nowhere. And I think the main thing to take away is that after Jesus died, he came back to life.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, so often, like, as I've talked to people about faith and Christianity and all that kind of stuff, like, there are so many people who doubt this whole resurrection story.
Sure.
Right? And I think at the end of the day, like, the resurrection, the fact that, like, Jesus actually came back from the dead, that he conquered death, like, that's really kind of at the heart of the gospel, right?
Absolutely.
Like, if Jesus didn't actually conquer death, then nothing that we're doing here has any meaning or value.
Absolutely.
Like, it really doesn't. Like, if he didn't do what he said he was going to do, if he didn't do the things that we've been talking about as a church for literally thousands of years, then, like, all of this is 100% pointless.
Absolutely.
And so, like, so often I'll get people who come to me who doubt the resurrection, which, like, let's just be real. Like, that's a totally legitimate thing to have questions about. I mean, people don't exactly die and come back to life.
Yeah, and it's not something that you and I can prove in this conversation.
We can't, like, at all. But what I like to do is I like to look at everything that happened after Jesus rose again. I mean, think about this. Stetson, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
What are you willing to die for?
My family.
Okay.
I hope I'm willing to die for Jesus.
Okay.
Like, if someone, like, God forbid, put a gun to my head and said, "No, you got one. All right,
I don't want to
let's try this out," and somehow, like, put me in a situation where it's like, I don't know. Like, I read these stories about people who are martyrs, and it's like, I hope I have that kind of courage. But yeah, family and Jesus, those are kind of the main things.
So would you die for something you didn't believe to be true?
No, never.
Would you die for a lie?
No, absolutely not.
All right, so let's think about these disciples who were there in that room with him. These are guys who had lived with Jesus, and there were a bunch of women who were there too. Like, they had lived with Jesus for several years. They had followed him around. They had heard him do all of the teachings that he had done. They had actually heard him talk about the fact that he was going to die and that he was going to come back to life, right? Like, this is something that Jesus was not shy about. Like, he was super honest about that. And they were there the day that he was hung on the cross.
Yep.
Like, his mother was there the day he was hung on the cross. His brothers were there the day that he was hung on the cross. Like, they all saw him die. And all of them saw him when he came back, right? This example that you read of what happened there in that room where Jesus showed up, it's like, I want some food. Like, that wasn't the only time Jesus appeared. The Gospels actually tell us that he appeared to a bunch of other people as well.
Yep.
And so you've got this whole group of people who saw Jesus alive, they saw Jesus die, and then they saw Jesus live again. Now, Jesus had 12 disciples who were following him, right? One of those dudes, Judas, ended up being a traitor, right? He killed himself, which is super sad, but, like, you know, it's just a part of the story. But there were these other 11 guys. Now, if you follow church history and kind of follow this story forward a little bit, you would see that 10 of those 11 guys were actually killed by the Roman Empire because of their faith in Jesus.
Yep.
And it was like a willful death on their part. Like, each of them were given this opportunity. Recant of this story that you're telling.
Yep.
Admit that it's fake. Admit that Jesus was a fraud, that he's really dead. All of them said no. Each and every one of them died. 10 of these 11. And the 11th guy, I mean, he didn't get it that much better. He was boiled alive in this, like, vat of hot water, and then he was exiled to the island of Patmos. It's the Apostle John. He wrote John and Revelation and a couple other books there. But for me, like, I look at that and I'm like, man, why would 11 people be willing to die for something they didn't believe in? Like, that for me is just like, dude, I kind of feel like that's actually maybe an indication that this whole story is not fake.
Yeah.
That it's actually real. And then I think about Jesus's family, right? You know, some of the Gospels actually tell us these stories of Jesus's brothers and his mother. Like, there was this one time he was teaching in Jerusalem, and they kind of thought he was nuts. They were like, hey, Jesus, why don't you come home? You're starting to make people a little worried.
Right.
Mad. Like, you know, maybe they're going to go like lock him up in like a nut house or something like that. Like, they totally doubted who he was. And let's just be real. Like, if you had a brother and your brother's like, hey, I'm the Son of God, I'm the Messiah, you'd be like, I've seen you wet your pants. I don't think you're the Son of God.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
And yet, after the resurrection, this same brother James, who had seen him die and come back to life, actually ended up being a leader in the church in Jerusalem, and he himself too was actually killed for his faith in Jesus. Right? Like, for me, the evidence is kind of overwhelming that Jesus actually did this thing that he said he was going to do, that Jesus actually conquered death, that he came back to life, that he's not just dead, that he's not just this historical figure that we've made up all these stories about, but it's like, man, like the evidence of what happened after the resurrection, how this faith actually spread all across the world. I'm like, man, like, I can't deny that there's validity to that.
Yeah, and on top of that, I'm sure you can agree with me here in this, is that I'm an entirely different person because of Jesus. Like, there are multiple, like countless moments in my life where I have been aware that there is something inside of me that is not myself, because I have invited cool. I've invited Jesus into that space, and like I'm pretty sure without Jesus I'd be dead in a ditch somewhere, overdosing on just a drug of my choice at that time. But yeah, the entire trajectory of my life is completely different, and that's all the proof that I have for myself. But the implications of this, like the fact that Jesus is alive, changes everything. And like part of it is in that like death piece, like the fact that Jesus died and came back to life, like the Bible talks about it as like almost like conquering death itself. And so much of what we are against is basically death. Like death through depression, death through addiction, death through just, I don't know, like all the things that we can acquire from life. And Jesus came to rescue us from like the after effects of sin, which is death. But by Jesus dying and coming back, he showed us that death is not something we need to be afraid of.
Yeah.
It makes me think of this dude. I wrote his name down. I think it's Robert.
California?
Nope, Robert Johnson. So in the 1820s, most of the United States believed that tomatoes were poisonous. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. This is just a couple hundred years ago. We thought tomatoes were poisonous. And there was this senator named Robert Johnson, and he was so frustrated by this that he got a bushel of tomatoes, and he sat on the steps of the Capitol and gathered a crowd of people, and he just started eating this whole bushel of tomatoes. And they were horrified. They thought he was like committing suicide on the steps of the Capitol. But after they saw him eat all these tomatoes and he was like totally fine, they're like, we can eat tomatoes. And I'm sure the Italians on the other side of the ocean is like, what's the matter with you?
We need a pasta. Maybe it's that drug lord who's
right, exactly. But it was just like, we can eat tomatoes now. And I think there's so many aspects of life that we are afraid to step into because we have this like underneath angst, fear of death. And there are things that Jesus invites us into, and we're scared of the risks of that.
Yeah.
But seeing that Jesus died and came back from life, we show he's more powerful than the things that can cause death, and that ultimately what he experienced is what we do after we die.
When I think that's life. That's so huge, man, because I think about myself. And I don't like this about myself, and maybe it's true about you too, but like so often I find that most of the decisions that I make are fear-based.
Absolutely.
So it's like, hey, I don't want to spend money on this because what if this happens?
Exactly.
Or I don't want to do this because what if that happens? Or I don't want to befriend them because what if this happens? And I'm sure you guys have so many examples of that in your own life, right? That's what happens when, I don't know, like, when that whole death thing is kind of controlling us, like, right, like when we live by fear, it's like we're actually keeping ourselves from experiencing something like really beautiful and powerful. And what Jesus actually invites us into, and I think the reason he's able to do this is because of what he did do at the cross and how he did actually come back. Like he invites us to lay our fears aside and to say, hey, I don't want you to live based on fear. I actually want you to live based on hope.
Yeah.
Right? You know, like fear doesn't have to control you anymore. Like you don't have to be worried about everything that can go wrong. Jesus is saying, like, but look at everything that's going to go right. And and it's not like this, oh, it might happen, it might not happen, right? Because Jesus, when he was on the cross, when he died, do you remember the words that he said?
I could list a few. Which ones are you thinking about?
It is finished.
Yep.
Right? So it's like Jesus came to do what he came to do.
Yeah.
And he accomplished it.
Absolutely.
And because he did this, like our future is no longer uncertain. Our future is no longer like ambiguous. You're like, I don't know, like, is God gonna take care of it? He's like, no, like, it's done. I've got this. I took care of everything that needed to be taken care of, so you can step into this with hope, with joy, with peace, with confidence, and know that I've got this.
Yeah. And what you just said, it definitely ties into a question that we ask all the time, is like when we've like messed up over and over and over, and we start asking that question that we've addressed in this series before of like, does God love me still, like, after I did this? And what you just said, it's like Jesus said it's finished. Like, he would still be on that cross if there was more to pay for, but he covered it all. Like, it's complete, it's done, like, we are forgiven and it's finished.
Yeah, and this whole like reality that Jesus is alive today. The reason we're kind of closing out this series with this one and talking about this one last is like, you can't have a relationship with somebody who's dead.
Absolutely.
Right? I can't have a relationship with a book, right? You know, and that's sometimes this thing that happens, like, where we just feel like God's up there, I've got the Bible, but like, it doesn't feel like he's present, doesn't feel like he's here. But if we could actually get it into our minds and our hearts that know, like, he is alive, he is dynamic, he is in our presence, like, he loves us, he cares about us, like, he is proud of us, it's like, oh my God, like, I could actually step into that relationship. And that's one of the key things we got to believe, right? Like, he's not dead, he's not gone, he is very much alive, and he is pursuing us, and he is inviting us into this thing. And if we can believe that, suddenly the fear is gone, because we're not afraid of what could happen. We know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then we could actually begin to turn around, right? To bring out the bush again, right? Remember we had talked about this idea of like how so often
he took his eyes off.
Oh, you took the eyes off, but
horrific.
Like we're turned away from him. But when we know he's alive, when we know he's here, it's like, oh, we can just turn right back and woo, Jesus is here.
Right. See, it's fun, huh?
It is fun, man. I want to take that home with me and just sit there and play with it. My kids will think I'm wild.
Yeah, I mean, just looking back at like where we landed on the past few of these, of like, Jesus is your friend, that can't happen unless he's alive. And Jesus is grace, and that can only happen because he's alive.
And he's continuing to offer us grace. It's not like this, he did it at the cross. It's like, no, every day there's grace.
Jesus is the point because he's alive. Like, if he didn't come back, he'd just be another wise person who said a bunch of smart things. And
he'd be another Sun Tzu.
Yeah, absolutely. Who said a really smart thing, which you learned earlier. Jesus is happy with you. That wouldn't mean anything unless he was currently happy with you, because he's alive.
And he is happy with you.
And I think, was it last week, Jesus is here?
Yeah.
There's no way that could happen unless Jesus is alive.
Yeah. That's good stuff, man. Well, what we want to do now is we want to actually hand this off to you guys to be able to talk about just some of the implications of this in your life, for the way that you live. So house party leaders, you got your questions. Hopefully you guys have read and prepared those. And for everybody who's in a house party, we want to encourage you, be honest, be open, wrestle with this, right? The goal is not to give the right answer. The goal is just to be real with where you are, and maybe to take one step closer to Jesus, or to turn around and begin to see who he is for the first time.
Yep.
So, have fun, guys.
By the way, there's a bagel right here if you didn't notice.
Oh, yeah. Remember we had said the first person to text us random things? So if you were the first one to text us about this maybe 20 minutes ago, expect a prize. And if you just texted us right now, you get nothing.
That's right.
Bye.